But what do you make of these comments coming from both Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates?
Good morning. I find the comments quite sensible because it's quite bizarre in any other industry to expect the low-cost producers to drop out of supply while the high-cost producers continue. So we know that OPEC, especially Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, are the low-cost producers of oil. So we expect them to continue. This is the more rational decision. We would expect US shale producers to drop off the supply curve over the next couple of quarters. There are two kinds of costs. There is marginal or short-term costs, which could be very different from the long-term costs of discovering oil. So in the short term, people could stretch it for another 3-6 months, but we will see that as the hedges run out, a lot of oil producers sold oil at 90, 100, etc. to hedge in their production over the next year. But as these hedges run out, we will see them drop out of the supply. Here I'm thinking about the US shale suppliers. In effect, there is a fundamental difference. A lot of the US shale producers have high attrition rates. The production drops by about 50% per year naturally. It's 40 to 50%. It depends on the oil field. Conventional oil wells drop at about 15% per year, 1.5. So there is a big difference in the nature of the supply curve. In effect, we have about 1/5 of the portfolio exposed to oil exploring companies and oil production companies. We can also differentiate between exploration companies and production companies. Exploration activity we expect to drop dramatically, while production is expected to continue, while we'll see the high-cost producers drop out over the course of the next couple of quarters.
Roshan, does that mean, with this recent rally, that we've seen the bottom for oil, at least for the time being?
It's hard to say a bottom right now. We would expect the repricing or the readjustment over the next couple of quarters. So the day-to-day or the weekly movements don't have too much long-term meaning, in my view. We would expect the ruble depreciation to be linked to oil price because Russia is a major exporting country. They have maintained their competitiveness of their oil exports by allowing the ruble to depreciate as oil fell. So we see a strong linkage with that. So we are watching Russia a lot. Russia is also key to the oil puzzle just as much as Saudi and the US shale companies are.
Yeah, Russia is taking the brunt of it. Vladimir Putin, of course, in that 3-hour news conference addressing the problems facing the Russian economy. But you are investing in Russia as well, and I did like what you said here. You said how to pick stocks. You're asking yourself that question, and you just went very, very carefully. I should imagine it is very, very careful if you're actually going to even try and invest there, right?
Indeed. So we have to look at companies or franchises which will survive a big dislocation in the economy. The Russian economy is going through a crisis. The stock market is repricing dramatically. The risk-free rate just went up. We know that the rates went from 10.5 to 17, which means that all equities have to reprice down by 20 to 30%. That is just normal. That's just par for the course. You're just repricing. Apart from this, we are seeing panic selling by perhaps some foreign investors. Russia, there is a risk of capital controls. Regime change could happen next year. So we are seeing all these scenarios. We are trying to pick after factoring these scenarios. So we are looking for hard assets which will survive any scenario. A port will still be a port. You can't rebuild a port. A port lasts forever because it's just some cranes on land. You have trains. It's hard to replace tracks. So we're looking at rail car operators. We are looking at ports. Then we're looking at some companies with little or no debt which do basics like produce chicken or pork and so on. So it's a gamut of franchises. We are not investing in video store companies or companies which have exposure to consumer demand. You can expect that to be quite poor.
Roshan?
But we're looking for franchises which will survive any scenario.